Back in Las Vegas with our executives here on Open Court. Obviously, big part of your jobs is dealing with a head coach, hiring, firing a head coach. What disagreements will doom a relationship with a head coach, and what can you live with?
Asking me?
I'm asking you.
Matt? Oh, ultimately, you know, a head coach, generally speaking, I was a coach, so, and I, grew up under a head coach. So they want to know what the path is. They want to know what the drill is. If it's a short term or a long term. Security obviously is extremely important. And give them the cards, deal them in, let them know the truth, whether it's not pretty or whether it's championship caliber. We're going through a little retool right now, and I can tell you that Rick and I go way back. We shared the same prep school, and Rick was my first and only choice when we were looking for a coach. And I think that relationship, obviously with Mark being the triad of decision making, we're in it for the long haul. And I think as long as you're honest and truthful with your head coach, generally speaking, he'll buy into the program.
I think the coach has the hardest job. I think he's right there on the court. He has the players' attention, the media, the decision making, and I think he's right. The communication and making sure the coach knows that he's supported. I think that's very, very important. And being honest with them, and after the tough losses, just going in there talking to him, and making him feel like you're not in this alone. And I think a lot of times just looking and seeing, I think that sometimes the communication isn't there, and I think you're not always going to agree, but I think you have to be able to talk it out. I think you got to be able to find a common path.
I always say this, it is a relationship, unfortunately, that's built to fail, because coach loses a game, huddles with his staff, and says, I don't know how we're supposed to win with these guys. I mean, can't win with these guys. And then you walk in the room and go, what did you say about the players? And then the GM says, well, if you'd play, you got so-and-so playing the 3, he's a 2. I drafted him as a 2. So you've got this disconnect that's inherent and preys upon our weaknesses as people. Because how many of us, when things get difficult, look in the mirror instead of looking out the window and saying, that one's on me. I didn't give the guy the right roster. Or a coach that sits back and says, you know what? I am not playing this guy right. Especially in the heat of adversity, when you feel the media, the public descending upon you, and you already are competitive and already are struggling because you lost. That's when we're at our worst. We lost in Game 7 of the finals. That can really derail things. We could have. First thing Steve says when we got back at Game 7 when we lost to Cleveland, in his coach's office was, I could have done some things differently. Like that's a self-awareness. And then I say, well, I didn't give you much. So it's a camaraderie, but like a marriage, like anything, you need to work at it. You leave it alone, it spirals. You don't touch that relationship, it spirals. But when it's good, somebody got a job where a friend of mine was becoming a GM or asked me a question. I said, he said, I've got a new coach or something. And I said, go to dinner with the coach and lay out one rule. You can't talk about basketball. Many of us don't even know what our coaches got kids, where they live, how they grew up. It's just winning, winning, winning. That's not how you build relationships. I work with Steve, who you probably know, and because of what he's gone through, I went through some things. The better your connection, the more you can stomach the losing. When you lose, you find out who someone is. And in this profession, when you're talking about job security, you're talking about getting hammered in the media, you're talking about paranoia, you're talking about who's coming to get you, and then add to it, you're just a competitive human being, you better have some good fabric in that relationship. So many things are trying to screw that relationship up. So many things are trying to hurt that relationship. You have to protect that coach relationship like a marriage. And the sad thing is you're almost with this person more than your wife, which is pathetic. But it's really that close of a relationship if you really want it to work.
I want to pivot to one more topic as we get here near the end of the show, and that's media leaks. There's more media covering the NBA than at any point in the league's history, obviously. And I want to start with Andy because the Miami Heat, as far as I can tell, are the least leaky team in the league. How much do you and Pat Riley and everybody else concern yourself with keeping things in-house, and how important is that to you?
You know the best way to keep a secret? Don't tell anybody. Just don't tell, limit the scope of how much information you put out. Keep the circle small of the different people that know the information that you have. And you have to respect that at the end of the day, the people that you're sharing it with, respect that they don't want the information out. Because so many people feel like they get rewards from getting the information out. And I think you have to be, genuine with your relationship with the media. They're the ones you're selling, ultimately they're the ones who are the ambassadors to the public. They're explaining what's going on. So I think you have to be careful of, I don't think you view the media as enemy. I think you don't have to be very, very careful when you're viewing them and saying, not be respectful of them or misleading or lying, to them. Just respectful of what the relationship is. But at the end of the day, our job is to make the choices, not to necessarily let someone get, advance information on the choice. And that's what our job is, and that has to be respected by everybody who has access to the information. Simply don't tell anybody. My parents find virtually nothing, virtually everything that's ever happened, my parents found out when it got announced.
They have to read the press release?
They get the press release to see what happened and say what's going on. I don't just talk about it, What's first rule of Fight Club? Don't talk about Fight Club.
Well, what about with you guys? Is it a priority? Do you care?
Well, I think the leaks generally come around teams I've noticed that have like a lot of transition and turmoil. It's the ones that are stable. Obviously, Miami's been stable for a very long time. I think the stable teams don't have as many transitional elements of owners but I actually think the leaks have been better, has been my observation. But
Better in what way?
I think it's less actually. Like I've been happy. I've had lots of conversations over the last year and key moments, and like none of it's gotten out. I've noticed it's better. It was like really bad when Twitter first exploded on the scene, and then now I think it's a little bit better. But
Have you shared anything with your family?
I do share things. My wife knows the CBA really well.
Really?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, she's a huge sports fan, so I'm lucky. Yeah. She doesn't know as well as Andy, but she's trying.
Are you guys done beating up on Bob?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Let's get out of here.
I've got good news for you.
That was going to be your answer, Donnie. How many?
E pluribus unum, it is over.
I've got good news. You can have your phones back.
Oh, no. Yes. Go. Yeah.
Get back to deal making as soon as you walk out of the room. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Matt.
That'll do it. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Warren. Not.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.